Well, welcome back, Big Ten Today. We are ready for the football season. Hope you are too. Anthony Herron is going to visit with me to talk about all the big storylines as we approach fall 2023. The newest AP rankings are out. How many Big Ten squads are in the top 10? And who could be rising to join them? Ralph Russo, the national writer, will join us. And our bud, the legend, Gene Keady, is now a basketball Hall of Famer. Another Hall of Famer, Mike DeCourcy, will explain Gene's greatness. It's all on Big Ten Today. Let's get going. Hi there from Chicago. Glad to have you with us here on Big Ten Today. Anthony Herron and Mike Hall. An hour full of fun coming up. I know we're not, days away. We're not hours away from football, but we're close enough that this show is back on an everyday basis. Good to be with you, man.
Yeah, man. You finally give me the time of day when the football season approaches. Then you stop ignoring me. You return my text messages. I'm very excited just to occupy the same space.
And that will end around January 8th or 9th. We'll go back to the way it should be,
That's
right?
how our relationship goes, yeah.
We got a ton to get to. I mentioned the AP poll coming up, but there's been some news since we've last been able to chat around Big Ten teams, and that is our big story for the beginning of this show. We're going to start off in Iowa City, where there was alarm around Cade McNamara, the Hawkeye quarterback. He got injured over the weekend. However, Kirk Ferentz says he is not alarmed by what happened with McNamara, says it is not structural with the knee. There's no timetable for his return, but the good news is it does not sound major. Also, there was news from Ann Arbor. As Dan Wetzel talked about, there was an agreement between Jim Harbaugh, the Michigan head coach, and the NCAA that got called for a 4-game suspension. That agreement is off, according to Wetzel and others at Yahoo Sports. The case is going to go to Committee on Infractions likely next year, which means in all likelihood Harbaugh will be coaching all the Michigan games this year. The NCAA Vice President of Hearing Operations released a statement about that, saying the Michigan infractions case is related to impermissible on- and off-campus recruiting during the COVID-19 dead period and impermissible coaching activities, not a cheeseburger. It is not uncommon for the Committee on Infractions to seek clarification on key facts prior to accepting. The Committee on Infractions may also reject a negotiated resolution if it determines the agreement is not in the best interest of the association or the penalties are not reasonable. If the involved parties cannot resolve a case through the negotiated resolution process, it may proceed to a hearing, but the committee believes cooperation is the best avenue to quickly resolve issues. When there's more on the Michigan situation, we will dive into that. However, we do have a man who knows the Iowa program incredibly well. Give me an idea, the tenor, the temperature rising in Iowa City when the guy who, for all intents and purposes, is the main reason for hope that the offense is going to be dramatically better this year than it was last year, got injured in practice.
I spoke to Tom Kakert of the Hawkeye Report this morning on Big Ten Radio, and he was talking about just sort of the collective gasp that went throughout Kinnick Stadium when Cade McNamara went down from a non-contact injury, and Iowa fans have already set it up on his background so well to know that he's coming off of a knee injury that ended his season last year in Ann Arbor. That being said, it was great to see him. And it's always funny where, I've done it to others and others have done it to me. When a football player goes down in practice, not so much in a game, but in practice, a bunch of teammates rush over to grab him up off the ground. You have no idea how banged up the individual is. They just come rushing over. They snatch Cade up off the ground all right, man, you good, you good. What if he wasn't good? But fortunately, it does sound like he'll be fine. Like Kirk Ferentz said, soft tissue injury, and, hopefully, and everything that I'm hearing out of Iowa City, the anticipation is that for now, he's not expected to miss any games. So that is great news.
And while he's not the only difference, Eric All, the tight end, is there. They have a young running back who's already making a lot of waves. He's the main reason why there's optimism for Iowa, because if they just had a pretty good offense last year with that unbelievable defense, it's a whole entire narrative around the entire program.
And I believe that even though, Cade McNamara was never a guy who put up huge passing numbers in Ann Arbor, he is a guy who quarterbacks with an efficiency, who quarterbacks with a command, a field generalship that you're hoping for out of that position, and he brings that to the table. It's something that Iowa offense really needs, from a passing perspective, the confidence that he's able to infuse into his teammates. And, I've said this a few times, Mike, I didn't have a big issue with Brian Ferentz, the play caller. We've seen him call plays for the Iowa Hawkeyes for quite a while now. Before the last couple of years, I thought there'd begun to be more creativity and versatility to the Iowa offense. Now, as a QB developer, okay, that's where, to me, all right, let's talk about whether or not, Spencer Petras got better, Alex Padilla got better. Cade McNamara comes in as a championship-level quarterback with huge pedigree, and, you can look at it and say maybe he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder as well to try and see if he can boost up the Hawkeyes in the same way that he was a key cog as the starting quarterback to lead Michigan out of their Big Ten championship drought.
We mentioned this is the first of the beginning of our football season worth of shows here on Big Ten Today. So since we have you, I want to stay with Iowa, but turn our attention to some preseason predictions. Like you've been doing your prep, you've been doing your research. When you think of the Big Ten West, Iowa's one of those names in contention to win it. Who's the favorite to win the West this year?
The collective media chose Wisconsin, and I do feel like part of that was off pedigree because there's even what returns, which a significant amount of production does return for Wisconsin, especially on the defensive side of the football. But it was a fairly ineffective Badgers defense last year. To me, the pick to click is the Hawkeyes. And I will admit, I tend to hesitate to choose Iowa during the preseason, bias aside. But I just think there's as much about Iowa that we know what to expect as any other team in the Big Ten West Division. We just talked about their quarterback. We have seen the way over the years that Kirk Ferentz, when you have returning starters on the offensive line, when you have experience up front, that Brian Ferentz, that this program grows and nurtures guys up front. And there is experience that returns on the offensive line that didn't perform that well last season. And yes, they lost talent to the National Football League on defense last year, but so much talent comes back as well, including the preseason Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten Conference, Cooper DeJean, and not only as a DB, as a return specialist also. He will be making plays all over the place for the Hawkeyes, perhaps on offense as well. Fingers crossed for some Hawkeye fans for what he may add to that side of the football. So I just believe there's more proven commodities for the Hawkeyes: defense, special teams, and then even the offense, a young, talented running back who's going to be a star this season as well. I'm just more confident in what Iowa brings to the table than anyone else.
I do feel like it's almost an overlooked team in Iowa because offensively of how disappointing they were last year. So even if they just take a decent step up, they're a serious contender for sure. Why do you think most of the media are leaning towards Luke Fickell in what is his first year as the head coach, first year for Phil Longo as the offensive coordinator, first year for Tanner Mordecai as the starting quarterback? What is it you think that everybody else sees in the Badgers?
There was a lot to get over with the way Iowa operated offensively really the last couple of seasons. So I understand why that's tough for folks to kind of look beyond. But we've seen Iowa win double-digit games in regular season with mediocre offense before. But from Wisconsin's perspective, that newness I do think is worthy of excitement. It's just very unproven right now. You don't know for sure what the Phil Longo offense with Tanner Mordecai as a quarterback, what will that end up looking like? We do know they got a stud in the backfield and Braylon Allen. Won't shock me one bit if he ends up being the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, because I talked about it even in calling Badgers games last season. There's a skill set that Braylon Allen can access that the previous offensive system didn't necessarily call upon. There was a lot of just running in between the tackles, maybe the occasional toss play. He didn't catch many swing passes. He didn't run a lot of pass routes. He reportedly has improved a lot as a pass protector, and he's got very natural, quiet hands for a running back. So think about Braylon Allen just barreling down on defenders and tacklers in the open field when he leaks out of the backfield. That's a sight that we're going to see quite a bit. So they're going to get the ball to Allen, but it won't all be just based off taking the snap from under center, turning around and handing it to him in the backfield.
If it's not one of those two, Iowa and Wisconsin, which along with Northwestern are really the only three teams that have been winning the West Division in the last 9 years, let me throw two more teams out at you. Tell me which one you feel better about. The Fighting Illini, 8 wins last year, got a highly thought of quarterback transferring into the program this year. Defense was even better than Iowa's statistically last year. And Minnesota, a little different reason I bring them up. It's not necessarily that they have you've got a 29-year-old quarterback who's been there for a decade and a half that we're used to saying, or the best rusher in the history of the program in Mo Ibrahim. But no one ever talks about Minnesota, and every year they're winning 9 games or more under PJ Fleck. What do you think of those two teams in the West?
Those are, in my opinion, they're no doubt the two other teams that would legitimately be in the mix. And you're thinking about the development that we anticipate we'll see from the Illini behind the leadership of Brett Bielema. Now, of course, they got to replace Ryan Walters as a defensive coordinator, but there is continuity, where the defensive scheme won't change very much. So you anticipate that's going to be great. On the back end, yes, you lose some talent to the National Football League, but between Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph up front, they're definitively the best combination. You're just looking at like two guys, a tandem of defensive linemen. There's no one better in the Big Ten Conference when you're combining two individuals on a defensive front. So they will wreck the game. They will wreak havoc on the opponent in a way that a young secondary will have the opportunity to grow with, and an offensive line that, similarly, like I talked about with the Hawkeyes, even though Illinois played really well up front on offense, they will have enough experience that returns where you say, you know what, can their offensive line play at least as well, perhaps even better, as a backfield that loses Chase Brown, that you anticipate they will continue to have a domineering approach to running the football, and then that can set up perhaps some play-action passing opportunities, because Isaiah Williams, I think he's one of the more electrifying playmakers in the Big Ten Conference that is really just starting to come into his own as a wide receiver, getting that position figured out. So I've got every confidence in the world that Illinois will be formidable in the West. I love the case you make about Minnesota. It's just you lose so much in the backfield without Muhammad
A lot of
Ibrahim.
questions.
And then do they go to more of a volume passing approach? Kirk Shiraka gone as well. So I think there are a few more questions about the Gophers because their offense may tweak a bit. But if nothing else, we know that they've established the possibility of playing great defense season in and season out.
You're right. Another year, another new offensive coordinator in Minneapolis for sure. But again, the last 4 years, 9 wins, a COVID year, and 11 wins. It's been a great run so far for PJ Fleck. Okay, so that's the West. Much different story in the East. Almost everybody nationally says it's coming down to the top 3 traditional big dogs, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Michigan's the defending champ back-to-back years. Ohio State is overflowing with talent once again. And I really think Penn State is nationally sneaky. I mean, as good an offensive line as James Franklin has had, maybe the best running back tandem in the country, one of the most electrifying defensive players in Abdul Carter. And in my mind, it kind of all hinges on Drew Aller. Is he good or very good? He had the perfect setup last year, getting to sit behind, getting in 10 different games. When you look at the teams in the East, those 3 bigs, what stands out to you the most?
Well, Michigan being the hands-down odds-on favorite going into this season, it is a position we haven't seen the Wolverines in a while. Seeing them in Indianapolis, talking to the Michigan players during Big Ten football media days, I was struck by how Blake Corum and Mike Sainristil, how comfortable they seemed in their capacity to win another Big Ten championship. And frankly, it's just kind of fun to see Michigan comfortable in that role because for so many years, it's like they're trying to climb back up the mountain and take down the Buckeyes. Now they expect it, and now the collective college football audience expects that to happen. And then there is so much that returns for the Wolverines. So why wouldn't we be comfortable and confident with Michigan defending their crown? Now, I do think once you go beyond the Wolverines, Ohio State, this is a position we haven't seen the Buckeyes in very frequently, where they're kind of the wounded animal. They're a little bit discounted and underappreciated. We saw what that was like when they took the field against the Georgia Bulldogs. No, they didn't win that game.
Played great, though.
But there was not another team in the country that played Georgia as well on the field than what we saw Ohio State do in their college football playoff semifinal matchup. Quarterback obviously is a big question to figure out, but I do believe you got 2 talented guys, whether it ends up being Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, stylistically different guys, but on the whole, we've seen a more durable, more physical approach that Ryan Day has taken over the last couple of years, and I think the Buckeyes benefit from that up front, and with guys like Sawyer and Tuimoloau up front, you got the second and third level with talent that returns on defense. You expect that Ohio State should continue to grow on that side of the football. I'm glad you mentioned Penn State, though, because to me, they are a team in the national championship conversation. And this is probably, the line of scrimmage you mentioned, especially on offense, is as important as any for Penn State. But just top to bottom, Drew Aller, I don't believe will have to be great early in the season. I asked James Franklin about it in Indianapolis if this is the most insulated that his quarterback position has been, and he hasn't named Drew Aller the starter.
True. No one at Penn State did in Indianapolis.
Right. And, I think we all anticipate he will have the inside track for it, but the quarterback position on the whole is insulated for Penn State with playmakers at tight end, playmakers enough at wide receiver, but the most talented backfield combination that we've seen in State College in years. That pays huge dividends for a young QB. And, man, that Manny Diaz defense is fun to watch. It's a fun film to break down. They impose their will on the opponents.
Great hire bringing him in a little while ago. I'm glad you brought that up, by the way. That was something that stood out to me in Indianapolis as well. The players and James Franklin, when you talked about Drew Aller, they made a point of saying, we like our quarterbacks, Drew Aller and Bro Pabula. And the players were not saying, like, oh, it's definitely Drew. We're just, they were saying Bo is really pushing him all summer long. So maybe we have a surprise in store, but even if we don't, it's good to have healthy competition pushing you to do your best.
And it gives the opportunity to grow into November. If Drew Aller's great in November, then we're talking national championship. They can win a bunch of games even if he's only good.
All right, much more coming up with Anthony throughout the hour, but we're going to shift sports over to basketball. The great Gene Keady, inducted into the Hall of Fame. We're going to talk with Mike DeCourcy about it right after this.
Big Ten Today is presented by Gatorade.
One of the all-time greats will now forever be remembered in the shrine of all-time greats. Purdue legendary head coach Gene Keady is now a member of the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, inducted over this past weekend. His personality and his presence were both so integral to who he was and is, but also his stats. 25 years as head coach, 7-time Big Ten champ. Here's what it sounded like.
I would like to thank the Naismith Hall of Fame Selection Committee for selecting me to be enshrined into the 2023 class. Growing up in Kansas, my parents, Mary and Lloyd, instilled in my sister Norma and I the importance of hard work, loyalty, and family. They showed me firsthand how to love and treat people with respect. In my 25 years as Purdue's head basketball coach, I'm proud to say that we had a graduation rate of 92%. I did not accomplish all of the accolades at Purdue alone. I was surrounded by great people, including, but not limited to, Bruce Weber, Steve Lavin, Kurt Clausen, Glenn Robinson, and Conzo Martin. My greatest joy is seeing the success of my student athlete and former assistant coach, Matt Painter, who has brilliantly continued the legacy of greatness at Purdue basketball. I must mention fellow Big Ten coaching icons and Hall of Fame coaches Bob Knight and Tom Izzo. Bob and Tom were worthy opponents and rivals, but are even better friends. Most importantly, many thanks to my beautiful wife Kathleen, daughters Lisa and Rachel, and our 11-year-old granddaughter Zenon, who is quite the basketball player. I've led a blessed life and am humbled to receive this great honor. Remember, always try to do the right thing and play hard. Thank you.
That's so great. Your big stat presented by Gatorade is Gene's career. 512 wins, 7-time Big Ten Coach of the Year, and he made the NCAA tournament a whole bunch, including 6 seasons ending the year in the AP Top 10. Our basketball expert, Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News, is good enough to join us now. Mike, I want to talk everything you think about Gene Keady, but let me just start off with what you saw this weekend. What was your main takeaway from Gene getting inducted into the Hall of Fame?
I think the thing that struck me more than anything was his conversation about what Matt Painter has meant and continuing the program that Gene built. As a matter of fact, when in the season when Matt was coach in waiting and Gene was coaching his final year, I went to West Lafayette and spent a few days with the two of them and with the staff, getting ready as they got ready for their first game of that season, what was Gene's final season with the Boilermakers. And so I got to see how they were preparing that transition, and you could see how integrated, obviously Matt having been an assistant, having played there, but you could see how it was really going to be a continuation of the program that Gene built. And I think that's what we've seen ever since Matt took over. And some might joke, well, yeah, that's obvious because they haven't made a Final Four. But when you look at Purdue basketball, that idea that players go there, they stay there, they commit to the program, they commit to the system, they play for each other, they play as hard as possible, they're embraced by some of the best fans in national college basketball, the paint crew and all the others at Mackey Arena. And all of that began really with Gene. They had great programs before him, but what we see now is a continuation of what Gene built. And I think that's as great a tribute to him as what took place this weekend in Springfield.
You have one of the best set of eyes, Mike, in my career that I've met, of knowing basketball and seeing it. So when you look back on you covering college basketball, when during Gene's great career did it hit you the first time, oh, this guy's going to be one of the all-time great coaches?
Well, I think that you go back to the 80s when he was battling in one of the most amazing Big Tens. I mean, we've had great Big Ten basketball for so many years. But those late 80s when you look at the teams that Steve Bardo was on at Illinois and the great Indiana teams and the Michigan teams led by Steve Fisher that ultimately won the title in '89. And Gene is right there battling with them, even though he doesn't have the players, the future NBA superstars on the level of those guys. Now, he obviously had players who went on and played in the NBA, but not as many, not as high a level of superstar as what we saw with the Flying Illini or the Michigan team of '89 or some of the great players at Indiana. But there he is competing right with those guys, winning Big Ten titles, competing for Big Ten titles. You go back to the '88 team, the team that they had in '88 when they were #1 in the country. None of the superstars on that team, the collegiate superstars on that team, went on to great NBA careers. That kind of defines what made Gene special, that he could elevate those players, that they could elevate him, and they could have the success that they did in a league that was as loaded as the Big Ten was in the late 1980s.
And you already mentioned one of the big people in that time was Bob Knight, and those were two titans at the two big programs in a basketball crazy state of Indiana. Explain, what's the proper way to explain the relationship they had when they were coaching against each other? Because he mentioned at the end, they've actually legitimately become close friends the last handful of years. What was it like when they were going head-to-head in the 80s and 90s?
Well, they were ferocious competitors, but I don't think the animosity was there at a level that might ordinarily be the case in two great programs in the same state, in the same basketball crazy state. Look, I've lived in Indiana for almost a decade now. The Pacers came up with a slogan years ago, "We grow basketball here," and that is 100% true. I've lived in a lot of places that really embrace the game. The Cincinnati area, Memphis is as good a basketball city as there is. But this entire state is all about basketball. And yet they were able to be at least cordial. And I think that says a lot for the kind of person that Gene is. When I was going into the business and covering other clubs around the country and not really interacting much with the Big Ten and with Gene, you know, he had that scowl and that sideline personality that everybody thought he was really mean. And then when I got to the Sporting News in 1995 and got a chance to meet him and speak to him, and he turns out to be like the greatest, most lovable person that there is. I hope he's not offended by this, but I still call him a big teddy bear. He is such a wonderful guy, and I think that's why he and Knight got along to the extent that they did. I think it was impossible for Bob not to like him.
That's exactly where I was going to go next one, is the personality of him. Because when you were just a fan watching basketball in the 80s and 90s, you saw the comb over and the scowl, and you were like, boy, that dude doesn't look friendly. But you talk to Painter or Weber or Lavin, and they're like, you don't get it. His dogs' names are Princess, Wimpy, and Queenie. Like, he's got a great personality. When he worked here at the network early on, I remember he would call me Miker, which is not a nickname for Michael. No one has called anyone named Michael Miker, but he did it. His personality, Mike, was so warm and inviting, and unless you knew that going into it, it took you back a step when you first saw it in person.
I think it was 1990 that they got eliminated from the tournament in the second round. I think I have the year right, against Texas, I believe. And he was very upset and pounding the table, literally pounding the table. I think that game was in Indianapolis. I'm testing my knowledge of college basketball here, my recall. But I remember him pounding the table, and that was the image that everyone across the country had of Gene. But when I got the chance to work at the Sporting News, and now I'm having to deal with everybody across the country, and he could not have been more friendly, cooperative, helpful, going out of his way to return telephone calls. He was the absolute best to deal with. And I think that the longer his career went on, the more people started to see that. But I think it's really blossomed in his post-career. When he's a consultant at St. John's, when he's done media work, people have gotten the chance to see how absolutely wonderful he is as a human being.
Yeah, he's had just this fascinating life, an amazing career. He was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He made an appearance on David Letterman doing the top 10 list once. I mean, he's got stories for days, and it's really cool that we got a chance to get to know him personally. Mike DeCourcy, always great to get your insight. Thanks for joining us, man. All right, back to football after this. We're going to bring Anthony back in. He's going to tell you the top 5 quarterbacks in the Big Ten this coming fall.
Big Ten Today is presented by Gatorade.
Well, here's a look at the most passing yards last year in the Big Ten. C.J. Stroud and Aiden O'Connell, not surprisingly, leading the way. They put up big numbers every game. Talia Tagovailoa also was great. One of the all-time great passers in Penn State history, Sean Clifford, and of course J.J. McCarthy up there as well. With that in mind, it's time for the Big Five. And that is what we do with Anthony Herron. He gives us his list of the top 5 at a certain spot, and we're going to focus on quarterbacks this year. Start off with number 5. In your mind right now, the 5th best QB in the league is?
The very cute animation, by the way, for the Big Five. I'm assuming you invented that. But let's go to State College initially for the number 5 slot at quarterback, a guy who, like you referenced earlier in the show, Drew Aller has gotten some work. We've seen him on the field of play. He's gotten some action. You know, maybe some folks will anticipate he'll vault even higher up this list as the season moves forward, but I feel comfortable putting him at number 5 for the moment because he's surrounded by a representative level of talent, and a lot of that talent offensively is at the running back and tight end positions. And so as a young QB who will likely be a starter for the first time here, he's not going to be tasked with being a volume passer. He won't be tasked with having to carry the Penn State offense, and that should allow some growth and maturation while Penn State still has team success getting through the meat of their schedule. But he is an immensely talented player as an athlete. His size and mobility and the arm strength that Drew Aller can display is something that I think will end up taking the top off of opposing defenses.
I mean, he was a legit hotshot high school prospect.
Yeah.
And again, it's like the perfect setup. A great offensive line, 2 unbelievable running backs, and last year he got a taste in almost every single game. It could work out wonderfully for James Franklin there. At number 4, you're bringing in a guy who's brand new to the conference, which is saying something for what you must think about him.
And I believe that this could be the question as it gets answered that could separate Wisconsin from winning the Big Ten West Division or perhaps just being a bowl team or something along those lines, because Tanner Mordecai is a level of quarterback who comes in with a pedigree that you think about the stats he put up at SMU. He'd be the all-time leading passer in Badgers history if those numbers were actually done and as he was competing for Wisconsin. Now he's in Madison, and there's an offense that they will run. Luke Fickell said, yeah, I know I'm a defensive guy, and I'm coming from Cincinnati, and blah, blah, blah. Brings in Phil Longo with him as well. And there will apparently be some sort of a mold, a mesh of what we sort of historically think of as the air raid, while also, I mentioned, taking some pressure off of the QB, the ability to do that with Braylon Allen in the backfield. And so I love that with the first 2 QBs, that it doesn't need to all be on them. And Tanner Mordecai, getting to meet him for the first time in Indianapolis, just extremely impressed with his presence as a guy who talked about knowing how important it is for him to get to know his teammates, to ingratiate himself with that locker room. He has seemingly done that. And so he comes in with a big resume to Madison.
It's funny you mentioned that, because when I talked to Luke Fickell in the spring, the thing that stuck out to me was he said that Tanner Mordecai embraced being a leader, which I know you're supposed to with a quarterback, but still, when you're brand new to the city, to the school, to your entire teammates, that says something that's a great sign. Number 3 is a guy I think you've probably had on this top 5 preseason list multiple times, but he's at a different school this year.
And overall, man, Cade McNamara, if you're looking for a quarterback who's been there and done that, there's no one else in the conference who's got the resume of championship-level play that Cade McNamara does. And now that transitions from Ann Arbor to Iowa City, and to have that transition take place from one program to the next, that what they ask of the quarterback is very similar, because he's not some guy who's going to say, I need to throw it 50 times to feel like I had a great day. He wants to lead Iowa to wins, and there are playmakers who are now joining him in Iowa City as well. You already had Luke Lachey, who's going to return at the tight end position, but his old teammate, Eric All, is going to be there with him also. I mentioned a deep and talented backfield in Iowa City. Also, the growth they have up front on the offensive line will make life for Cade McNamara that much easier, but also just in recognizing that I can be a guy to just move the chains. He doesn't need to take big chances. You just need better offense from Iowa, because the defense will dominate. The special teams will be spectacular, and Cade McNamara can be a guy who just finds those moments for the big play. And we saw him do that at Michigan. There's very little reason to think he won't pull that off in Iowa City.
I love saying this. I can't say it much longer. 2 games ago for Cade McNamara, he started a playoff game.
Right.
3 games ago, he started and won the Big Ten championship. 4 games ago, he started and won against Ohio State. So he's got a lot of talent there. Number 2, you're going with Maryland star. How come?
This one, I honestly was quibbling a bit back and forth between number 2 and number 1, because I don't know that there's many players who are as important to their team's success as Taulia Tagovailoa. What Mike Locksley has done in College Park in continuing to build his offense around Tagovailoa, and Taulia knows the system he's in. There's very few returning starters in Big Ten football. Taulia Tagovailoa is one of the few, and he does it in an offense that he knows extremely well. He does it in an offensive system that he is very comfortable with, and as they've been able to build that system around his skill set, we see now Taulia with a new crop of receivers that Mike Locksley is extremely excited about. The growth for Tagovailoa, being a guy who can more consistently make that big play as a quarterback, I think that's going to be showcased this season. He came back to Maryland for a reason. There were opportunities to go elsewhere, whether you're talking other programs in the portal or maybe the professional route. He came back, and I do believe we're going to see the best version.
Reports say there was money on the line for him to go to some
doubt.
different schools, but he chose to say, number 1, Michigan's J.J. McCarthy. Why?
I love what we saw at the end of this season. I talk a lot about growth because people want to get from point A to point Z in rapid fashion with young quarterbacks, and it's just not a realistic growth pattern. You know, it's not a linear path when you're talking QB development, and we saw development from J.J. McCarthy last season. You and I were on the tailgate tour last year. I was talking about the Michigan offense and some of the missed opportunities that were there for deep balls and hitting speedy playmakers in space that J.J. McCarthy was missing earlier in the season. Think to that Ohio State game. Think to the Big Ten championship game. Even think to the college football playoff matchup with TCU, where, yes, there were pick sixes in that game, but he threw the ball with more volume and more conviction than I had seen at any other point in J.J. McCarthy's career. That's a part of why Jim Harbaugh describes now his returning starter at QB as a generational talent. I have a hard time disagreeing with him, and so with everything that returns around J.J. McCarthy and in anticipation of the thought that they may ask more of him more consistently as a passer this season, I do feel comfortable saying that he is the top quarterback returning in the Big Ten.
343 passing yards in a playoff game for a sophomore, a career-high performance for J.J. McCarthy. Can't wait to see what he's got coming this upcoming fall. All right, more from Anthony in just a little bit, but we're also going to get some outside perspective. Ralph Russo is going to join us because the AP poll is out. We're talking all Big Ten teams after this. So the AP poll is out for the preseason, and look where Big Ten teams are. 5 of them ranked in the top 25, headlined by 2 of the top 3 in Michigan and OSU. Penn State up there in number 7, the Badgers at 19, and then the Iowa Hawkeyes. Keep in mind the Gophers and the Illini did not get ranked, but did receive votes. To talk about the AP poll, why not bring in an AP writer? Ralph Russo's been doing that since like 2005, I think. He's good enough to join us now. And Ralph, let me start with this. What does it say to you that 3 Big Ten teams are ranked in the top 7 of the preseason poll?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is basically the league has 3 college football playoff contenders. And if you're a college football playoff contender, you can call yourself a national championship contender. Those 3 heavyweights still in the same division for one more year, divisions in the Big Ten. it's going to be hard for them to sort of all emerge, right? Banging heads against each other, and the rest of the conference is pretty strong too. So you have to watch your back as far as upsets. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that any of those three teams would be a viable choice to not just win the Big Ten, but reach the playoff and maybe even have a chance to win a national title. And if you're the Big Ten, that's exactly where you want to be.
Michigan and Ohio State ranked up there 2 and 3, as we've become accustomed to seeing the last few years with them. We could talk about them all night long, but I asked Anthony Herron about this earlier, about Penn State, and I think the word I used was sneaky good as a national title contending team, that they belong in that discussion. Ralph, if they're preseason number 7, that means I'm not alone. There's a lot of other people that feel that way.
No, I don't think there's anything sneaky about this team. That's number 7 area. That's right around the fringe of where you call a team a national championship contender. As Anthony and you discussed, how much of that depends on an unproven, though Drew Aller did get some playing time last year, but a new starting quarterback. Now, James Franklin hasn't announced that yet. There's still a competition going on, but we all presume the former 5-star is going to be the starter there. And how much pressure does that put on a guy who's a very talented kid, former 5-star prospect, as we said, with a lot of great pieces around them? It's a quarterback like that who reaches his ceiling. I'll give you an example. It's a similar path to Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, where you redshirt or you don't play that much your first year, and then you step right in as a starter on a very good team. Expectations are very high. In today's college football, we often see these type of players really break out. They don't need a huge ramp up, to develop. They become top tier starters immediately. Can Drew Aller be that for Penn State?
What does it say to you that 2 Big Ten teams in Wisconsin and Iowa got ranked when there are question marks in terms of people that are very important, brand new to their positions, whether it's Cade McNamara, brand new as the Iowa quarterback, or Luke Fickell, brand new as the head coach in Madison?
I'm not so much surprised with Iowa. I understand there's some change there on the offensive side in Cade McNamara, but Iowa is still something of a pinnacle of stability, right? I mean, they've had their offensive issues, but you're going to get very good defense and you're going to get very good special teams. So I can understand Iowa being a safe pick for voters. I got to tell you, I'm a little surprised at how much preseason love Wisconsin is getting. The team assembled by Luke Fickell in his first year as coach certainly looks pretty appealing, but we go back to stability. With Iowa, there is so much turnover. There is so much change for Wisconsin this year. To assume that it will all come together, that this team that has had this X identity for so long is now going to change to Y offensive identity, a more, balanced or pass-based. Hey, maybe even it's an air raid. I know that's a term that they don't like to use around Wisconsin. But I think all that uncertainty around Wisconsin surprises me a little bit, that the voters in general, that there's been so much preseason love for the Badgers.
Yeah, Anthony was saying that too. There are more knowns with this Iowa team than maybe anybody else in the Big Ten West this year. Let me ask you about Big Ten teams that just missed the rankings. Illinois received votes, Minnesota received votes, Maryland didn't, but they feel like they've got a chance to be a really talented team. If I made you pick a squad, whether it's those 3 or anybody else that's not ranked in the Big Ten, that has the best chance to end the season ranked, who would it be?
I think it would be Illinois. And I think it goes back to identity. Now, I say that knowing that they had some very important players who are going to be very good NFL players move on from this team, right? Star cornerback, star running back, really good defensive backs, and key pieces of their coaching staff. Plus, you throw a new quarterback. So there's a fair amount of uncertainty in there. But I do feel like with Brett Bielema there's an expectation of what Illinois wants to be. And I think a path to being that with a pretty good offensive line. You can always seem to find another running back. I like what they're, making some changes on the offensive side of the ball. So I feel like there's, even in a time of turnover, identity means a lot to me. And I think Illinois has established that identity. So I kind of like Illinois as a possible team to slip into the rankings later on.
You know, when the list first came out, it's hard not to immediately think of the future of the Big Ten. And number 6 in the country right now is USC. Number 10 is Washington, which would make half of the top 10 next year Big Ten teams. Throw in Oregon up there in 15 as well. What do you make of the West Coast future Big Ten teams?
Yeah, there would be 8 big, as you know, just to put the number together, there'll be 8 Big Ten teams if you use next year's alignment in the top 25. Listen, this is why you add Oregon and Washington and USC, because you envision exactly this. We could dominate the top 25. We're bringing in well-established programs with a history and a track record of success, a history of success, which is very important, but also they look pretty good right now too, right? You see a Washington program that maybe has hit some bumps, but boy, when things are run well at Washington, the ceiling is very high. And we can argue about conference realignment and is it good for college football, is it bad for college football, yada yada. The fact of the matter is, all you have to do is look at the AP poll to see the appeal of the moves that the Big Ten made played out right there. If you can have 8 of the top 25 teams, really 8 of the top 15 teams, that's a move that's going to be pretty appealing to a conference.
You know, since we have you here, Ralph, a national writer, and we're on the topic, I put this caveat out before I asked the question. Nobody has perfectly predicted conference shuffling the last handful of years, so there's a strong asterisk on this. But in the immediate future, before the season kicks off this year, do you expect any more changes to come?
Well, the Pac-12, or what's left of the Pac-12, still has to sort itself out, and there's a lot of question marks there. We saw last week the ACC was interested in Stanford and Cal. I don't think that is a dead issue, because I think there's a lot of other issues within the ACC that could be tied to when it comes to revenue sharing. Hey, if you really want us to expand, teams on this side of the table, well, the schools on the other side of the table might be able to accommodate that if you have a little more revenue sharing. There's also the possibility of the Pac-12, I do really believe, reconstituting. There's complications with that. Everything is complicated. And I do think a lot of these things will probably be sorted out over the next couple of weeks, so that by the time we get to kickoff, my guess is we'll know the next home for Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State, and if that home is just a renovated Pac-12.
Right, and who knows how long any homes will stay at the current number they are anyways, based on what we've been seeing the last handful of weeks for sure.
Like everybody's just renting and nobody's buying. Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. Ralph Russo, thanks so much for your time and your insight. We appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
All right, Anthony's coming back to close out this show. What about the Heisman Trophy? How many players does he think are legitimately in contention for the Heisman from the Big Ten? We're going to ask him right after this. Well, the Heisman hopefuls for the Big Ten look like this. Marvin Harrison Jr., no surprise, from Ohio State. You got 2 Michigan studs, the QB J.J. McCarthy and the running back Blake Corum. Drew Aller we mentioned, though he doesn't have the numbers. When you look at everybody else's numbers last year, comparatively, there is a lot of expectations for a guy who is very, very talented. And this is kind of the fun time of year where you can talk about the Heisman, because you could make an argument for a bunch of folks. And there have been years where there's someone that might have been a fringe candidate and then explodes onto the scene, and you're like, oh, why weren't we talking about them in August? You gave us a list of like 7 or 8 names, so I'm just going to pick a couple of them.
Please do, surprise me.
And tell me what your thoughts are.
All right.
Let's start with Marvin Harrison Jr.
All right.
The only reason I want to start with that is, isn't he going to be quintuple teams like 40% of the games he plays?
I mean, but he's got playmakers around him as well. So even though everyone knows Marvin Harrison Jr. can make magic happen when the football's in flight, you have to account for the remainder of that Ohio State offense. Not only the wide receiver room, man. I mean, if you got multiple running backs that are healthy, you can throw it to Travion Henderson and others out of the backfield. We saw what Cade Stover could do as a tight end receiving out of the backfield, having a record-setting season. So Marvin Harrison Jr. will see his fair share of one-on-one matchups, and even when he does it, man, it is not a 50-50 ball. It's not even 70-30. We're talking 110 to -10, man. The ball's up. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get it. So I do think, especially with some of the questions at quarterback for who will start at Ohio State, they don't come in with the Heisman hype, but if that passing attack flourishes like it always does under Ryan Day, Marvin Harrison Jr. will be the reason why.
I mean, they have locked in the moniker of wide receiver U.
Right.
I mean, the last few years, what Brian Hartline has done recruiting and developing, because you mentioned Emeka Ibuka is there, Julian Fleming is there. They got freshmen who will have a hard time hitting the field, but they're going to find a way because one of them is going to be the next Jackson Smith and Jigba, et cetera, down the line. There's a great history of running backs in Wisconsin that have been in the discussion, whether it's Melvin Gordon or Ron Dane, who won the Heisman. What is it about Braylon Allen that makes you think he belongs in the discussion this year? I'm
just so intrigued by what he will mean to Wisconsin's offense this season. This new look Badgers attack is going to be different than any of us have seen, at least in our lifespan, from Wisconsin offensively. We've seen Braylon Allen, the slam dancer. We will now have an opportunity, I believe, to see Braylon Allen, the ballroom dancer, the more finesse aspects of his game that he can bring to the table, leaking out of the backfield, routing defenders up in space, and getting the football. He has got such comfortable, competent hands for a running back, and I believe that the volume that this offense will throw won't only be to wide receivers. You're going to see Braylon Allen, the pass receiver, in a way like we've never seen him before.
So the first guy I mentioned is a wide receiver. They don't win the Heisman all that often. The second is a running back. They win it a good amount of times.
It has happened, yeah.
It has happened, for sure, but it's mostly been a quarterback award. But I'm looking at your list, and you have someone who is not a quarterback, who is not a running back, who is not a wide receiver.
Nope.
How serious do you really think Iowa's Cooper DeJean could be in the Heisman discussion?
Count him in the conversation because he is a playmaker like very few others. The athleticism is there, and it's shocking how quickly he made the transition because he was essentially playing against a bunch of Mike Halls in high school, and then suddenly he's thrust into Big Ten action a year later, and he showed that he was capable of it. And then last season showed that he could even go beyond being capable, was a playmaker, man. Pick sixes, tackles in space, a return specialist. I believe there's every opportunity for Iowa to maybe add Cooper DeJean into the offense just with some packages, with a few plays there. Because when you look at him in high school, I know you watched him recruiting as well, he's a playmaker with the football in his hands, man. I hope that happens, and if it does, legitimate Heisman contention.
Maybe like a Charles Woodson type thing where you get some kickoff returns at the right moment in the right games, and all of a sudden people are adding that up on top of what you do on the other side of the ball. It'll be fun to follow. Good stuff, Anthony. Thanks a bunch, man.
Thanks, man.
We'll see you back here on Tuesday.